This is number 13 on the back of page 3 of your packet. You've got two fractions or rational expressions that are being added. Remember, addition and subtraction requires common denominators. Your strategy is, number 1, you're going to ignore the numerators and factor the denominators. To find common denominators, you have to know what their factors are. So, I need to figure out two numbers that multiply to give me that, the -6, and then add to give me a -1. And so if I did 1 times 6, I could get a -6 if I put a negative on one of them, but I would never get a -1 in that middle area, so that's not right. If I did 2 times 3, if I put a negative on one of them, I could get a -6, and if I added them, remember, if one of them is negative, you'd actually end up subtracting, you could get a -1. So the left hand side here, p squared minus p minus 6, it's going to factor to p minus 3 times p plus 1. I gave the, sorry, not that, p plus 2. I gave the 3 the negative because the larger number when you're combining is always the number that gets the sign. So this ends up being 5 over p minus 3 times p plus 2. And then plus, remember, ignore the numerators. P plus 2 is not factorable. So I'm just going to write that. Then, okay, so factor denominators. Then you look at I have, who has, and you can see that there are p plus 2's in both, so I don't need to do that. But you don't have a p minus 3 on this side, and so I'm going to have to multiply by p minus 3 over p minus 3. What that's going to give me is, first of all, the left-hand side I haven't done anything to, and let me just back up and say this. I now have, let's just highlight, p minus 3 and p minus 2, and both of them, they have common denominators, which means I can write p plus 2 times p minus 3 in a single denominator, and I'm just going to cancel, just going to do the math on the top. So looking at this, the 5 just comes over. You've got a positive 1 that's going to be distributed, so that's going to be plus 1p minus 3. Now you're going to do the math. 5 plus 3, it's going to equal, p has no common factors, and then 5 minus 3 is plus 2 over p plus 2 times p minus 3. Now then you just look for any ones, p plus 2 over p plus 2. Guys, really when you're canceling, you should kind of be thinking this. P plus 2 goes into p plus 2 one time, p plus 2 goes into p plus 2 one time, and that equals, the end is 1 over p minus 3. And the reason I say that is that if everything cancels out of the denominator, you're cool. You don't even have to write the denominator. That is not true for the numerator. Okay, so if the numerator, if everything cancels, you still have a 1 there because you're dividing a whole by something into smaller pieces. So the answer is 1 over p minus 3 to question 13.